Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Your Money, and welcome to Level Up when it's time for wealth management. So this is our conversation where you guys are going to learn the difference between what a business manager does, what an artist manager does, and what a wealth manager does. So let me welcome my guests, Lewis, Corey, and Eden. Please jump up, join me, and we will get right into it. Hi.
Hi,
guys.
right.
Hi. So Corey, I'm going to pick on you first because you are an artist manager and a producer manager. So why don't you just lay it out for us? What do you do? What is your job?
Okay. So I specifically manage producers and songwriters. Shameless plug, I'm wearing the hat. I'm the executive vice president of a company called Hallwood Media, where we exclusively manage producers and songwriters. So there's multiple manager titles in here, like business manager, artist manager. I handle all of the business deals, day-to-day life, everything through the career of the artist, including navigating relationships such as lawyers, publishers, business managers, wealth advisors, financial advisors, managers as well. I partner with my clients in order to handle all of the business in their life, so they can just focus on their creative and music. And that's my relationship with my clients and artists. I handle the business and the branding of their career while they make the music. And yeah.
Perfect. So Lewis, you're a business manager. So now what's the difference? This is 101 between what you do and what Corey does.
Right. So what happened, Corey, manages the artist's career, right? We're like their kind of a home business office, right? So what we do is Corey's out there and he's hunting and he's creating business for the artist. The artist, then Corey comes to me and says, Lewis, here's a contract that we just signed with a record label. We just signed with a publisher. Our job is to do the accounting, pay the bills when they go on tour. When his artist goes on tour, we're paying the per diems. We're sometimes negotiating some of the contracts for their travel. We hire their nannies, fire their nannies. We buy their cars. We buy their homes. We get their insurance. Corey creates the mess, and we have to clean it up. And then the artist, and then the thing is that we have to actually make everything as transparent as possible for the artist. So then Corey says, look, I brought you all this business. We're making you all this money. And then, they want some transparency, because we also have to make sure that the artist doesn't spend all their money and that we're putting money away for their taxes. So again, we handle all the business side, taxes, insurance, and on the investment side, we kind of will work with the Edens of the world. I've also was a wealth manager at one point as well. And so that's it. We just handle all the personal finances and business finances.
All right. And so Eden, you round us out with what you do.
So basically, I'm the last person that of the trifecta on this call that gets involved, because now the artist is actually making money, and enough money to not just pay their bills, but they have excess capital that they're ready to invest. So I do all the planning. We talk about the goals, and we kind of start backwards. So what the goals are, and then I manage the investments to meet those goals. But I work very closely with Lewis and Corey in terms of managing the artist.
Absolutely. So, I think the way I want to sort of structure this conversation is, we've been hearing so much in the business. I mean, I used to around an independent record label for 13 years. And I don't know, about 10 years or so ago, everybody started saying, you don't need a label anymore. Artists don't need a label. They just put your music up on Spotify and there you go. Now you've got a career. And I feel like I'm not going to defend labels for the rest of my life, but I will say you may not need a label, fine, but you need a team. You absolutely need a team. You need people who can do the business part of the music business while you do the music part of the music business and the creative part. Because really, at the end of the day, we don't want artists who are doing your jobs. I mean, the jobs that the three of you have are real jobs. They're not part-time gigs that you could also be, making amazing beats and amazing songs in the back room. Like, let's focus people. So what do you guys think about that? Go ahead.
No, Push, I'll tell you, well, the artists are right-brained, right? They're very creative people. And if they're doing our type of work, they're not going to be creative, and they're not going to be making Corey any money. His artist he might as well be an accountant, or it might be a wealth manager. So it's really important that they have the manager, they have the wealth manager, the business manager. I think there's one person here missing that's usually part of the artist team to also protect their wealth, and that's the attorney, right? The entertainment attorney. That normally what we'll see, I think, Corey, I don't know if there's anybody else that you would see on the team besides like the business manager and the attorney when you guys are meeting, but I think that's the core, because most of the time when I'm having conversations with the artist, it's the manager online and the attorney as well.
Yeah, I mean, the only other person who might be overlooked but actually very integral is the assistant of the artist. Because often artists aren't really great at communication, and if there's no assistant, depending how big the artist is, but if they're having to hire business managers and wealth advisors and stuff like that, I sure hope that they have an assistant, so the manager is not responsible for dealing with things like laundry and very, very basic things like that, and scheduling and stuff like that. So an assistant's important as well. And I thought you brought up a really good point when your question, Louis, you did when your question, Portia, about labels and stuff, and that you want the artist to focus on the music. And now during COVID pandemic, with the whole crypto craze and stuff, I've had several clients trying to get very involved in their own wealth management, and we'll spend sometimes hours and a whole week just looking at different stocks on Robinhood. And I tell them, this is why you need a business manager and a financial planner. And so, because for your career to keep blossoming and for this machine to keep moving, I need you making music, focusing on that. And then let's hire the right people like a Louis or Eden to help focus on that. So you're not spending a week looking at this deck for this investment that you know nothing about. Go in the studio, make some more music so we have more money coming in, and then let's get Louis and Eden to handle that. That's my perspective of that.
I feel like the older I get, the more the word respect jumps up, for me, because I feel like the more I get into the world of music business, which now is like 25 years in, but whatever, like I still just keep coming back to, like, at some point you have to respect each other, right? And respect the fact that each person on this panel has years of knowledge. And so none of this is stuff that you can just get up in the morning and do, right? Like, you actually have to know people, you have to know systems, you have to be able to do the jobs. And so I feel like, that's a weird thing. I feel like sometimes people outside this industry are just like, oh, why can't the artist do it all? Why can't the artist do everything? Well, these are real jobs that people, have a lot spent years perfecting and doing well. So let's talk a little bit about planning, because I can imagine that working with artists, I've worked with artists for many years, so it's not imagining, it's knowing. Artists are not always the greatest at planning. So how do you guys handle just having the conversations with artists?
So I'll share with you that one of the things that we like to do is we like to talk about their vision and their values to see what kind of value we can create. And like Eden said earlier, you kind of begin backwards, right? When you do financial planning or do any kind of planning, you begin with the end in mind. What are you trying to do, and what are you trying to accomplish? And what do you want to see in your career? I think that's a lot that Corey's also having a conversation, because he's trying to get them to a specific end where they're at a certain level. And so when it comes to finances as well, the problem, because I've been doing this for 30 years, so I've had very iconic artists as clients that come in, and you would assume that they have all their finances in order, but they haven't filed tax returns for 3 years or 4 years, to be quite honest with you. Or just because they're making a tremendous amount of income doesn't mean that's it's creating wealth. If the artist is spending all the money, there's nothing left over for Eden to invest, right? So our job is also to make sure that we're doing the budgeting, we're controlling their spending, and saying, how quickly do you want to create financial independence? And so we need to have those conversations, because nobody's ever talked to them about that. And also it depends on the age of the artist and where they're coming from, right? What socioeconomic background do they have? Do they have parents that were highly educated? or did they grow up like me? I grew up in the barrio where we didn't have any kind of financial education, didn't kind of have that help, and now we need to be guided a little bit more. Do we need to do more hand holding? So it's sitting them down, having them talk about their vision and values, and also what are they trying to do and how they want to help other people. Because I've noticed that I handle, mostly musicians, and the musicians also have this generous heart. We always end up creating foundations for them or nonprofits because they always want to give back. I've always seen musicians are a little different than the typical film people or people on television. They've had to work a little harder, and they really appreciate that hard work. But they do need a plan, and without that plan, they're not going to get anywhere.
I think also it's important to work with a team that understands the industry, right? I mean, there are financial advisors and business managers that are a dime a dozen that work in other industries, but if you don't get that the client might be considered high net worth because perhaps they've started to really, accumulate a bunch of wealth, but it's one of the only industries where you can peak at 32. And that's it, right? Like you've made whether you've sold your catalog or you've made your killing, or that's it. Like we don't know if you're touring again, if your next album is going to be a hit. It's all about planning and kind of having to reel the artist in, because generally it's the first time they've made a significant amount of money, and the inclination is to want to start to spend. And then we kind of have to come in and play the good cop, bad cop, game of, okay, so we buy this house and then what happens, right? You've got 40 more years of supporting your family and your kids, and like, where's that? And you've now sold potentially your stream of income, right? So where are we going from here? So it's my job to preserve capital and make sure that I'm producing income on that capital. So there's a lot of planning that goes into it, and having conversations with like everybody on this panel.
Yeah, and then for my position, it's so important to have amazing professional people like Eden and Lewis, because it comes down to what you said, Portia. It's that hope. What you hope is that your client and your client's parents, and even maybe sometimes your client's best friend who's in their ear, living in their house off of them, is all on board and understanding that we need this business manager, and we need Eden to help plan for the future. Because like you said, peak at 32. I find a lot of these kids, they're peaking in their young 20s. And the problem is they'll get their first big bag in their young 20s and think, because I'm only 22, it's only going to keep getting better from here. And then me as the manager, who often has like a brotherly relationship with them, or brother sister and friendship with them too. It's important that they have the professional that they can respect and be on board with putting money away for the future. And not now with social media and stuff, it gets very exciting to do these high risk investments, and to also understand and listen to Lewis and Eden and people like that in planning for what's going to happen for those couple of years where you don't have much music coming out, or in 10, 20, 30, 40 years when you're not doing this anymore. So yeah, I absolutely respect people.
I would tell you that the biggest obstacle that we have to deal with is actually their artists kind of self-sabotaging themselves. And because when they're 20s, they think they're going to be making money for the longest time. So I will share with you that I'm a big proponent of what I call behavioral finance or psychology, right, with the artists. And that's different than just investing. I mean, that's basically sitting down and talking again about what needs to happen to create financial dignity in their lives. And so we have to constantly, artists are constantly always attacked. When I say attacked, everybody's coming after them because they think they make a ton of money. And so whether they have insurance people or private equity people or somebody betting out a certain business for them, and we have to kind of hold them back and make them think through. They're very reactive instead of very responsive. They don't take time to think things through. And that's because that's their nature. That's their creative side. So that self-sabotage, I think Corey will probably tell you, and even if she's worked with artists as well, that's one of the biggest things is how do we get them to slow down a little bit. I always say be quick, but don't hurry. slow down a little bit and really listen to the wisdom of their team, and not make instant decisions, because I will tell you probably, and again, I only say this to Corey because I know he handles the artist and he handles directly with the artist, and it's that self-sabotage that is just really complicated to deal with, especially when they've got to a certain point where everybody around their team is afraid to tell them no. And that becomes even more complicated.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I just had to tell a client no when he wanted to buy a house. And I said, you can't afford it. And he said, of course I can afford it. I have the money. It's ridiculous. How can I not afford it? I said, because you can't afford it. I said, we have plans and goals. And if we spend this money, you're going to come back to me in a couple of years and we're going to be in a lot of trouble. You don't have the income coming in that you once had. And I think, as Corey just said, maybe they're peaking at 32, maybe they're peaking at 22, but the concept is that you think this is like a never ending stream of income, that it ends. Trust me, it ends. For all of us that have worked with artists for years, I'm 24 years in the business, it ends at some point. There are very few artists that live on for decades. So we're here to be the bad guys, unfortunately, and say no.
And it's like kind of a thank me later type thing. And with you saying afford it, I had a business manager once tell one of my clients that if you can't afford to buy it twice, you can't afford it. So he'd have $60,000 come in and want to then go buy a $60,000 watch. And the business manager said, no, to buy a $60,000 watch, you need to make $120,000. If you can't buy it twice, you can't afford it.
That's good. That's good advice. So I did the keynote for this event yesterday with Sally Velasquez, who's also a business manager. And she said exactly what you guys have been saying, that her job is to say no. She says, that's my job with my clients, is to say no. But Louis, I think what you touched on was so important, like the emotional well-being of the artist, and also talking to the artist, because there are people, like, you have to figure out what's important to that person. Like, maybe there's a piece of jewelry that, they just need to have for their, sense of self or something, right? And so it's like negotiating, you have to like go into that with a negotiating spirit, right? Like, I understand that this is so important to you, but you have to think down the road, if I buy this piece of jewelry, what's going to be left for me?
Right. Well, the other thing is that we have to get to know their personality, right? So I deal a lot on the Latin side as well, and Latins tend to be very conflict avoidant. I'm the opposite. So I will tell you in your face, no, I don't have a problem with that. I'm going to make sure that I'm protecting you and taking care of you. But if you get too strong with them, they're not going to come back and tell you, well, why not? They just kind of don't, and they'll just go out and do it themselves without telling you. Then you find that after the fact. The goal is to really understand the personality of the artist. And are they a thinker? Are they creative? Do they need, if you tell them, do they need time to really just kind of think through what you said to them? They don't need to make a decision. Some people are very fast and want to make a decision right away. So again, finances it's a dance. It's an art. It's just not black and white. It's not something you go to school and learn something. You have to learn how to incorporate the money with the emotions. And then if you can figure out a balance, because the goal is, you want them to enjoy the fruits of their labor. You want them to enjoy. And unfortunately, let me just share with you, Portia, is that their fans expect them to live a certain lifestyle. And it's almost like they expect to live a certain lifestyle. They have to wear a certain type of clothing. They have to wear a certain type of watches. They have to live in a specific in a certain type of neighborhood. And most of the time, Eden will probably tell you that they can't afford half of that stuff. But it is what attracts the fans to them, right? And so it's really interesting. And then they want to take deductions for all the jewelry that they're buying or their watches, and you can't do that. They go, can I deduct it? I go, no, you can't. That's why Corey's saying you got to buy it twice, because you got to earn 2 times as much. Then you got to pay the taxes, and all you have is $60,000. You got to earn $100,000, pay the taxes to have $60,000. So it's really important that you get to know the artist, who they are, what they want, but also their personalities, and let them be. I've got some clients that I'll talk to, give them advice, and I don't know whether they heard me or not. And they'll call me back 2 weeks later. And then I realize they needed time to process the information. Other ones are just, we trust you, just do it, go ahead, get it done, not a problem. And just so you know, real quick, when it comes to money, one of the things that we've had to do over the years is because, again, there's been a lot of tragedies with business managers who've ripped off artists as well, is being very transparent. I've been in this industry for 30 years. Credibility is really important to me, but at the same time, we, create systems in which our clients can log in and see everything that we see, because it's really important. If they're not going to get involved, but at least that they have access to all their financial information. And also to make sure that, sometimes it depends on what kind of relationship the manager has with the artist. But, sometimes we'll call the manager, say, hey, we're going to be putting away a certain amount of money for his taxes, and I'm going to put it in this account. And the manager said, well, don't show it to him because otherwise he'll spend it. It depends on but we have to let the client know, right? And we've got to explain to them why. So it's transparency is really important. Conversations are really important, and always being in tune with the entire team, making sure that if I'm making a decision, you said something, Portia, I think you call it the ABs, the connecting dots. And at our firm, we call it the ABCDs of business management, always be connecting dots. And I rarely have a meeting with the artist by himself. I'm going to have the wealth manager and the manager and their assistant on that call or on that email, so everybody is aligned and executing what needs to happen.
So Corey, when you go into a new relationship with a new artist or producer or songwriter, do you have like a checklist in your head of like the things that you need to sort of, people used to ask me when I did A&R, they were like, how do you know when a band is ready to be signed, right? And it's like, well, they have to make great music, right? They have to be great performers, all this stuff. But like, it was always in my head, like, do these people want to work? Do they want to do this job, right? Because this job is way more than just, writing a couple cool songs and then hanging out with your friends for the rest of eternity. Like, there's a lot to it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So now that I've got some notoriety in the industry, I've kind of people approach me often for management. People will tell me that their friends, their boyfriends, their daughters, their sons make the best music, and you should check it out. Or my daughter has the best voice. You need to sign her. And I'll say, oh no, I think she should apply for the show The Voice, because I tell people all the time, the music industry is not just about making good music. So what I care about is that they have a good head on their shoulders. Obviously, the music needs to be amazing, but that's just your ticket into it. Now. It's really important that they have a good team. If they already have a team, if they don't have a team, I know it's all going to be on my shoulders to not only help their career, but create the team around them. And that I feel like I have the luxury now of being at a point in my career where I'm not desperate for new clients. I would only want to work with someone who would be able to see big picture, who would respect my advice that they need a business manager when the time's necessary. Sometimes it isn't at the beginning if they're just developing. Sometimes they don't have the millions of dollars yet or hundreds of thousands of dollars yet to hire a Eden to start investing, but that they're going to trust me to guide their business and their career. If they're super talented, but they're difficult to work with, please go on to someone else. I'd rather keep my doors open and keep my bandwidth open and space in my mind and heart and energy. Because people don't understand management. When someone just will casually ask me to manage them, I usually don't respond. But if I do, I explain to them what they're asking me is to come in such a deep relationship that I'm literally going to put their needs ahead of my own, and make them a priority in my life in addition to my wife and son and clients I already have. So it's a very deep and important relationship. So therefore, I feel like I have the luxury of being at a place in my life and career where I'm only going to work with people who will be a pleasure to work with, and that it's going to be challenging to build any career and have any success. It's not easier, everyone would do it, but that they'll at least trust me in guiding them to find the right team members like Lewis and Eden. And that's my answer.
Yeah, that's where we come back to that thing about respect, right? Like, I feel like that's, I feel like when young people are getting into the music business, they have to understand there's decades of experience that come with every person who's legit in this business. And, you have to respect it exactly like you said. I mean, I remember when I was an artist manager, and thank God I didn't have a family and children at that time, because it's like their needs were ahead of my own. It's like I cared about, whether they got the right seat on the airplane and whether the peanuts had salt on them, or like all that stuff was really important. And thinking about doing it now, it's like, God, I have my own stuff that I need to take care of, which is kind of funny. But Eden, do you want to speak a little bit to how you work with business managers and artist managers? I mean, I think we've heard it here that it's obviously an organic, unit that people kind of move forward with. But I assume that you also have people that you've worked with for years that you think are terrific.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, actually, I like to start working with an artist pretty young in their careers. I just think financial literacy is so important. And, listen, I work with artists that I never talk to. I only talk to their business manager who has power of attorney, and they're really not involved at all in their finances. And then some that I do, that text and call me all the time, that I'm fully involved with, that I've known for years and years. I mean, I've grown up with some of my clients, right, in our respective industries, where I've been working with them since, they've had what they would call, monopoly money, making their first buck. And, with artists, I tend to, lower my account minimums by a lot. With an average high net worth individual, you've got to have 3 to 5 million generally to have my team managing your money. In the entertainment industry, it takes a while to get to that point, but I actually want to work with them from a really early stage in their career when they're just starting to make money, and I want them to understand what's going on. I just think it's important. I think all of us would choose for our clients to really take an interest, but not take control. I just think it's important for them to know what's going on. But as Corey said before, you want them focusing on what they do best, not trying to run the money or be their own business manager or own wealth advisor. But I think it's important for them to periodically review what's going on and have an understanding of what's going on. I think it's important to start early in your career, and just to watch what's. And as Lewis said, there's total transparency in everything we're doing. It's not like they don't have access to the information. Everybody has statements and confirms, and we're readily available to have conversations. They can log on at any point of any day and see what's going on in the accounts. But I just think it's important for them to take an interest early.
I completely agree with Eden and respect so much, and love that you're willing to come with people early on. I think the important thing is just finding someone with integrity and someone who really believes in the artist early, like yourself. Because the other end to that is sometimes artists will bring a business manager or someone in too early, when just like the watch they couldn't afford, and now they only have a couple $100,000 in the bank, but they go give it all to someone else because that's their minimum or whatever. So finding someone who's down like yourself to grow and build with them is important. But yeah, if there's an option to start early, I completely agree. That's amazing. Just to find someone great like yourself who's
Thanks.
willing to join.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's super important. And I think if you're going to be in this industry, again, you want to work with a financial advisor that gets it and understands the business and is willing to grow with you. Because you're just not, listen, I have gotten accounts of very large, successful people in the entertainment business further on in their career, right? That changed wealth advisors throughout their career, and now they've moved assets to me. But very often I start really early in their careers because I know their business manager, and they've asked me if the business manager believes in them or the artist manager believes in them, and I have a relationship with them, then I'm on board. And I'm all about taking the time to teach and spend the time it takes to really give them an understanding of what we're doing and talk about goals and talk about plans so that there are no surprises down the road. And then they just make better financial decisions. I see it with my clients all the time. If you walk into the office of any financial advisor and you're 27 years old and you all of a sudden have all this money, but they don't really understand the entertainment business, your asset allocation might look really different than what I might put you in, because I have an understanding of the revenue and the stream of income that's coming in and where it comes from, and how predictable it is or unpredictable it is. And to me, that's your equity exposure, right? So that's what we would call your equity. That's really the high risk part of your investment, and the investment is you. It's your industry. So that's the more volatile part of your sort of overall worth. And I'm here to preserve capital and make sure that we're kind of the slow and steady preservation of that capital. So we tend to roll in a bit.
Yeah, one of the things that we work with on since we're talking about wealth management here is also you have to understand that the artist has to have a strategy for their entities, right? Because if the thing is that, remember that there's a lot of lawsuits, there's a lot of litigation in the music industry between managers and artists, between record labels and artists, between fans and artists, between everybody and the artists. And so part of also holding on to their wealth and their personal wealth, because once they start giving the money to Eden, what's happening though, we want to make sure that they're being protected. So finding the right corporate structure is really critical to keeping their wealth. Having the right types of insurance, whether it's business insurance, umbrella insurance, general liability for their entities, is a way to protect their wealth as well, right? We want to make sure that also they're not spending money or starting to invest money when they're not putting money away because they forgot that they all have a partner, Uncle Sam. And if they're in California, I'm in California, I live in California and Florida, right? There's no taxes in Florida, but there's also tax in the state of California, and it can get rather high quickly. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on, if we're going to create wealth for them, what tax strategies do we have to minimize their liability so they have money to be able to put away? Because I've seen literally hundreds of thousands of dollars being thrown away over the years to the government by not properly doing tax structures. And so when we all talk about right now wealth planning, right, we all talk about, well, should he be investing or she be investing in taking a digital asset and doing it as an NFT or private equity? That's the hot thing right now. Everybody's on Robinhood, right? Everybody's got Coinbase. They're all investing in cryptocurrency. But all this other stuff is part of the wealth planning process. And the thing that is really complicated to work with artists is that know that when they pass away, if they've gotten a certain level of success, their wealth continues. And so we have to talk to them about estate planning and doing a trust for their assets. And I deal with a couple really iconic artists who have passed away. They're making more money now dead than they were alive. And so the family, all of that stuff is wealth building and wealth protection. So those are the things that sometimes nobody wants to have a conversation, because those are what are called the important things to talk about when it comes to wealth. They're just not the urgent things, or they're not the fatty things right now. When I say the fad right now is NFTs. Everybody's having conversations about NFTs, but there's a way to really build your wealth and build that what I call that strong financial foundation that they need to create.
And I think, it's also really important to remember that, artists are from a family, right? They have a family, and especially if they're young, like if they're not married with children, but they have parents, they have, siblings. And if an artist passes away at a younger age, the people who are left behind, who are now collecting that money that continues to come in, as Louis said, often have no connection to the music business whatsoever and don't understand anything. So if you have not set yourself up properly, so your family, your parents, and your estate is going to be left in a shambles. And I know we can all name, famous people that's happened to in recent years, but even some of the less famous people really have, a huge mess that gets left behind because the money continues to come in. It has to go somewhere, but nobody in the family understands how anything works.
Yep, absolutely. And the interesting part is they have to select a trustee, right? They select an executor for their estate and somebody who really should run the business. And the interesting thing, an inside scoop, I guess, when you're dealing with so many famous people is that, and when they have millions of followers and you start having a conversation with the estate planning attorney and we're asking them, who do you want to be the executor? And the spouses look at each other and they really sometimes can't name anyone. And you find that hard to believe with all the team around them and years of experience, so it gets a little interesting. But those are the things that you need to hold the artist and sit them down and have that conversation, because if you don't, it'll never happen. And that's why you've seen so many artists when they pass away, iconic artists that don't have an estate plan in place, right? So, but that's part of the process as well. Again, it's not the fun part to talk about. Also insurance is not something they really care about. It's boring to them, but it's something that's just as important than anything else as well.
It's boring to everyone, Louis, but we still need.
It's exciting to me, Portia. It's exciting to me. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's quickly talk about. Eden said to me in our prep call something that I thought was really cool, which is, one of the jobs of the artist manager is to protect the artist's revenue streams, and the business manager, like the entire team, is to protect the artist's revenue streams. And I thought, Corey, that would be an interesting question for you, since you do producer manager, since you manage producers. Right now, metadata is the unsexy, sexy topic, right? In the music business, it's the thing that's making everybody actually money, but it's like no fun to talk about, and half people don't understand it. But one of the ways that metadata is created, the base way is in the studio. The credits being recorded properly in the studio. So I just wonder, Corey, how you approach your producer clients about, the importance of getting those credits right from the beginning.
That's really my job, and then to work with the business manager and a lot with the attorney is making sure, and especially when making sure that they're credited properly. And just constantly, the music industry is so crazy. I don't know if there's another industry where there's so many different revenue streams and different things. And I'm just finding out about different things like the AMF fund I just learned about in the last year or so. And now I'm going back through all my clients' credits, some for 5 to 10 years plus, making sure that their producers use computers now to compose music rather than actual instruments always. So sometimes use actual instruments, and making sure that they're credited for the instruments that they deprogram, so they can collect that money, and making sure that the splits are in there. And now, and utilizing when they have a business manager, utilizing their royalty department or whoever that is on their team to make sure that they're not only that everything's registered properly, but often the artists don't sign the final contract or don't sign the sound exchange LOD. And then even though the contracts are done, like I had 2 clients who were on the top selling album of last year, and now it's been a year and a half, and they're wondering why there's no royalties. And then we find out, the artist just never signed the final contract, and you got to chase them down, yada yada. So it isn't really me teaching the client to make sure that this is done. It's my job, and me utilizing my relationships at the labels and business affairs and business management and attorneys, and trying to chase and get it done. And that's one of the unfortunate, tedious parts of my job, but it's necessary.
Right. It's like
a good team too, and from entertainment lawyer to business managers who will actually do it and not just go through the motions on the phone. Like, yeah, we'll look into that, but actually go. And that's why a business manager is an important part of the team too, especially when they're not being paid hourly, when they have a percentage of the career. I'm a big advocate for that, because then they're incentivized to go audit those publishers, go check the labels, please go chase them down, because when we go get those hundreds of thousands of dollars that are owed to us, or millions of dollars owed to us, you're getting paid too. And I'm a big advocate for everyone being incentivized, and when we win, we all win. Because that's how I work. I'm on commission, so I'm trying to help my clients make as much money as possible. That's how I make money. So I love when it's the same thing, the business manager, and then the same thing with Eden and the financial planners and wealth advisors. That the more money client makes, the more money we make. So we're just here to help. Yep.
The best clients, the most successful people in the business, in their own right, never question fees, because it means they've assembled the right team, right? And they're happy to pay their team, because without us, they're not going to make the money that they would have made without us, right? So they never question what we get paid, ever.
Yeah, and that's also to go back to the question earlier, Portia, when you talk about how I decide who I'm going to want to work with. If someone questions that at all, no matter even if I can make a ton of money with them right here, but they're unsure. But if I make something happen myself, or someone calls me directly, if you get paid for that, I say not a for other people. Yeah, I never want to justify my work to someone because I had to do that when coming up. But I feel like now I'm at a point, and we all are in this call as well, where you don't need to waste your time working with someone who doesn't understand that.
Yeah, and as I always say, 20% of nothing is nothing, right? So it's like the first year you work with an artist, you're doing it for free, and then when they start to pay to make money, you know, if they turn around and say to you, "Well, what the hell have you done?" and you're like, "I've been right next to you doing everything for you for X number of years."
And
so
then to further that, tell them 100% of nothing is nothing. So you can have 100%, sure. Or you can help me bring in the right people on the team, the business manager, collaborators in any sense. A lot of people are so worried about people who can't think big term. A lot of people are so focused on this one bag. It's like, hey, if we can help use this to now assemble a great team, would you rather have 100% of $100 or 75% of $1 million? You know, it's like that's what I'm saying. That an artist being able to have a mind that they can understand big picture and not be greedy and short term is just as important or more important to me than the quality of their music even. You know, so.
You have to make sure, that you're also using the right people. One of my experiences have been that a lot of the artists, because they started with their family members, where their cousin was the accountant, the tax preparer for the family, was doing their tax return. Then you realize that they've gotten beyond the scope of the work that they can do, but they still have them doing their stuff. And it's not been right for the longest time. For example, songwriters get royalties. Normally a royalty is reported on what's called the Schedule E and not subject to self-employment tax. Well, if you're a songwriter, it's your business. We can't tell you how many audits we've been through where the IRS has come back and audited them for the Social Security tax because their cousin or their brother or their sister or somebody was doing their tax returns and was doing it for regular people. The music industry is very, very nuanced. You want to make sure that your team has experience and that, for example, Eden knows that they're getting money from royalties, either from the sound composition or the sound recording, and whether they have money, what the business manager's looking to, are they signed up for sound exchange? Because again, our job is to collect as much money as possible for the artist, but you really want to make sure your team has experience all around when it comes to that. And we deal with a lot of young managers actually who are new and they've started with a young artist. And I've met with one yesterday who was really vulnerable and said, you know what? I don't know about the business side of it. I want to learn it. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. I want to be vulnerable and tell you that I'm not going to sit there and make it up. And I want to ask questions. And we thought, wow, that's a great business manager. That's a great person who's being vulnerable to say, I don't know that. Can you teach it to me? Can you at least help me understand it? And that's what you want to do. You want the team to be vulnerable to say, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. And as like a couple of days ago, I came across something I'd never seen before. And they go, you've never seen it? I go, no, in 30 years, I've never seen it. So I went and called a couple of people that I knew. I always tell people, I'm not the library, I'm the librarian, and I know where to find the information.
That is such a great way to put it. I love that. I'm not the librarian, I'm the librarian.
You made a very good point, though. It isn't just about finding a business manager and a manager and a financial manager. It's finding the right people. And so often people have had horrible managers or horrible labels or just bad members of the team, so they're now turned off to it altogether. So yeah, it isn't just finding teammates, it's finding the right teammates.
And switching it up if you need to, I think that's also something people need to, it is weird. Artists are there's so many layers because sometimes you get artists who are super loyal, but they're loyal to totally the wrong people, like the people who are not helping them and the people who are holding them back. And it can be a very frustrating business.
100%.
Absolutely.
But it's a great one, and it's the life we chose, right? So
that's right.
Totally. Well, you guys, we've reached the end of our time, and honestly, I could talk to the three of you forever. This is so fun, and I love your insights. They're so great. So I just want to say thank you for joining us today, and thanks for everything you do.
Thanks for having us.
I'd love to connect with all of you afterwards as well. Definitely can use more great teammates from my club.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Just sent you a LinkedIn, Corey.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Take care.